There are people you cannot help, not because you lack love, but because they fear what healing would make them face. They wear their wounds like protection and their pain like identity. They call it truth, but it's really defense. If you've ever tried to save someone who kept breaking themselves in front of you, you already know this truth in your bones. You pour out your patience, your empathy, your peace, and still they remain in chaos. If this resonates with you, stay with me and subscribe to the channel, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you see love, compassion, and the hidden cost of trying to rescue the wrong souls. You've always tried to see the best in people. You've believed everyone can heal if given enough time, enough grace, enough faith. But here's the hard truth. Some people don't want to heal. They want attention, not transformation. They crave your energy, not your insight. They want to feel saved, not become whole. Few ever recognize these types until they've been broken by them, and even fewer have the courage to stop trying to save them. Because the world has conditioned you to equate love with self-sacrifice, to give until you are empty, and call that virtue. You were never told that love without boundaries becomes bondage. Perhaps you've noticed this pattern. You meet someone in chaos. You see their potential. You offer help, compassion, understanding. They resist, deflect, or drown in their own excuses. You try harder, one more talk, one more apology, one more act of faith. But the harder you try, the worse it feels. And when they fall again, you're somehow the one who ends up apologizing. You find yourself drained, questioning your worth, replaying every word, wondering if maybe you were too much or not enough. You're not dealing with someone who can't be helped. You're dealing with someone who won't be helped. Because healing would destroy the identity they've built around being helpless. Trying to heal them is like pouring water into a sieve. Your compassion leaks through their denial. They are drowning, but they pull down anyone who reaches for them. You cannot heal someone who clings to their pain like armor. Pain for them has become a comfort zone. It's familiar, predictable, and safe. It gives them something to talk about, a story to live inside, something that justifies why life never changes. So when you come along offering light, they flinch, because light exposes the truth, that they've been choosing the dark all along, and maybe that's what hurts you most. Realizing they don't actually want freedom, they want sympathy, they want a witness to their suffering, not a guide out of it. You've probably told yourself, I can't just abandon them, they need me. But here's what few ever understand. Not every cry for help is a desire for healing. Some cries are loops of resistance meant to keep you listening, not liberating. They keep you caring. They keep you engaged. They keep you trapped in the illusion that love must always mean saving. It's a silent contract. Their pain for your purpose. And you, being who you are, sensitive, empathetic, awake, accept it without realizing it's draining your soul. This is the unspoken burden of the empath. The belief that love is proven through suffering. You stay even when it hurts. You try. Even when it breaks you, you believe, even when they show no desire to rise. But this isn't compassion anymore. It's self-erasure disguised as kindness. Not every cry deserves your answer. Not every wound is yours to bandage. Not every broken person is ready to be whole. Deep down, you've always known this. You've felt it in your nervous system, the fatigue, the anxiety, the emotional tightness that comes after yet another attempt to fix someone who refuses to stand. Your soul keeps whispering, this is not your burden. But guilt silences it, doesn't it? You confuse release with betrayal. You confuse stepping back with abandonment. You've been told that good people don't give up. But Alan Watts once said, trying to help those who resist change is like teaching a stone to breathe, because not everyone wants to wake up. Some people build homes in their own misery. They decorate their cage, call it reality, and resent anyone who rattles the bars. And you, boundless empathy, keep walking into their prisons with open arms. But love without awareness becomes destruction. Compassion without boundaries becomes chaos. And giving without discernment becomes self-loss. It's not about abandoning others, it's about recognizing when your light is being used to sustain someone else's shadow. Not everyone who calls for help truly wants to climb. Some only want a hand to hold as they sink deeper. The deeper truth, the one most people never realize, is this. Every time you save someone who refuses to save themselves, you steal from them the sacred pain that would have taught them how to rise. And you steal from yourself the peace that comes with letting go. But what if the reason you can't save them is because helping them keeps them from ever saving themselves? People resist help when healing threatens their identity. Their suffering becomes a story they live inside, a familiar role they know how to play. To lose it would mean losing who they believe they are. Transformation asks them to release that story, to face a world without the comfort of their pain, and that terrifies them. Pain, though heavy, is predictable. It gives them structure, attention, control. Healing feels like death, not of the body, but of the identity that pain created. This is why your love, your patience, your constant rescuing often backfires. You aren't just challenging their habits, you're challenging their entire sense of self. They say they want to change, but change requires surrender, and surrender requires humility. Few people are ready for that, so they reject your help while pretending to need it, confusing your compassion for intrusion, your guidance for control. Modern culture has made this confusion worse. We glorify the savior, the selfless giver, the eternal healer. From childhood, you were told to help everyone, to forgive endlessly, to understand people no matter what. But you were never taught when to stop. Society rewards martyrs, not the mindful. It celebrates those who burn out for others, not those who preserve their light through discernment. We call it selflessness, but often it's self-forgetting. You were taught that saying no is cruelty, that protecting your peace is pride, that walking away is abandonment. And so generation after generation, healers become hosts, feeding those who refuse to feed themselves. Let me explain what that really means. There are certain kinds of people, 6 to be exact, that Alan Watts warned against helping, not because they're evil, but because they're asleep, and they've made comfort out of their suffering. When you reach out to them, they do not rise, they pull. The first is the perpetual victim. They wear pain like jewelry, flashing it whenever life demands accountability. They find identity in tragedy, attention in sympathy. Healing would rob them of that significance. When you offer solutions, they nod, but their eyes search for pity instead. They don't want answers, they want witnesses. You'll hear it in their stories, long, heavy, and circular, always ending with, "But you don't understand." They confuse being heard with being healed, and in their world, healing means invisibility. Then comes the emotional leech, the one who mistakes your attention for oxygen. The more you give, the more they demand. You become their emotional battery, and if you ever step back, they collapse. They don't want your advice, they want your energy. They call it support, but what they really mean is sustain me. You'll notice it in how you feel after talking to them. Drained, foggy, slightly off balance. That's because they feed on your calm to stabilize their chaos. Next is the self-saboteur, the master of almost. They'll ask for guidance, promise change, even make progress until they don't. The moment things begin to work, they destroy the bridge you built for them. Success threatens their sense of identity because it would mean losing the comfort of failure. They need chaos to feel alive, struggle to feel significant. When you try to help, they unconsciously sabotage every step. Not because they hate you, but because peace feels foreign. The fourth is the blame shifter, the one who lives inside a story where nothing is ever their fault. Every downfall has a villain, and more often than not, that villain becomes you. They project their inner conflict outward, making you the cause of their discomfort. You'll find yourself explaining things you never did, apologizing for emotions that aren't yours. Their denial is their armor, and accountability feels like attack. You cannot argue with them, because their entire self-image depends on being right. Then there's the manipulative martyr. They've built their worth around sacrifice. After all I've done for you becomes their spell. They use guilt as a leash, kindness as currency, obligation as control. They'll help you when it serves their narrative, but resent you the moment you grow beyond their reach. Their generosity isn't giving, it's bargaining. They crave dependence, not connection, and when you pull away, they call you ungrateful because your freedom threatens their false sainthood. Finally, the spiritual bypasser, perhaps the most dangerous of all. They speak of light but run from shadow. They use spirituality not as a path to growth, but as a shield against discomfort. They say everything happens for a reason, to avoid feeling anything deeply. They preach awareness while living in denial. When you confront them with truth, they dismiss it as low vibration. Their light is performative, a mask that hides their avoidance. To help them is to walk into illusion. They don't seek awakening, only aesthetic peace. You've met these people. You've tried to save them. You've given advice that was never followed, comfort that became expectation, energy that was never replenished. You thought your love could awaken them, but their pain is their refuge. And when you finally realize that, when you finally understand that chasing the unready is not compassion, it's avoidance of your own silence, you stop trying to convince others to rise. You stop translating your value into service. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. Their confusion becomes their mirror, not your burden. This withdrawal isn't dramatic, it's sacred. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. You stop explaining why you're stepping back. You stop rehearsing reasons in your head. You stop trying to make your peace palatable. At first it feels cruel, like abandonment. But over time, the silence starts to hum differently. You realize it's not abandonment at all. It's alignment. Because some relationships only survive when you're the one doing all the emotional labor. Once you stop, they fall apart. Not because you were wrong, but because you were the glue. You begin to sit with your own stillness, and something beautiful happens. Guilt starts turning into understanding. You start to see that compassion without discernment is self-destruction. Helping, you realize, was never the same as healing. Awareness is what heals, awareness of your limits, your energy, your truth. You start to understand that the urge to rescue was never about them. It was about your own discomfort with witnessing pain. You mistook fixing for love because fixing felt safer than feeling. But now you're learning that love doesn't always intervene. Sometimes love simply observes. Of course, your mind protests. It whispers questions shaped by old conditioning. Isn't it cruel to walk away? No, it's consciousness. You cannot pour from an empty soul. But isn't helping my purpose? Only when it empowers, not when it enables. What if they never change? Then their karma remains their teacher. You no longer confuse endurance with virtue. You stop playing God in someone else's lesson plan. This is the most difficult part of transformation, the redefinition of kindness. You begin to see that true compassion sometimes wears the face of distance. It doesn't rescue, it reflects. It doesn't chase, it trusts. You realize that allowing someone to face their consequences is not cruelty, it's faith in their capacity to grow. You start to sense that every time you interfered with someone's struggle, you delayed their awakening and your own. In this stillness, you discover the art of sacred separation. You learn to hold both empathy and sovereignty. This isn't withdrawal, it's evolution. It's not pride, it's peace. You understand that walking away doesn't mean the love ends. It simply shifts form. You still wish them well, but you no longer wish yourself away in the process. You release the need to be understood because peace is not built on validation. It's built on alignment. And now something inside begins to change. You no longer rush to soothe every discomfort around you. You begin to feel a strange lightness in choosing silence over explanation, distance over debate. The healer in you learns restraint. The empath in you learns balance. You no longer confuse chaos for connection. You realize that your peace doesn't require their participation. You start to merge your heart with your boundaries, compassion with clarity. The healed empath learns to see suffering without becoming its prisoner. You can now stand in the presence of pain without losing your center. You no longer absorb, you witness. You no longer drown, you float. You become both open-hearted and untouchable. The metaphors of your transformation reveal themselves in nature. A butterfly doesn't drag caterpillars into the sky. It flies to show them what's possible. A tree doesn't cling to dying leaves. It lets go so spring can come again. The river doesn't argue with the stones that block its path. It flows around them, carving its way through patience. You realize that you too are that river, eternal, clear, moving, unbothered by resistance. And yes, the fears come. Fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of losing love. But each one dissolves in awareness. Loneliness reveals itself as peace that no longer depends on performance. Judgment no longer stings, because only the unhealed call your boundaries cruelty. And love, real love, begins to show its true nature. It doesn't demand you bleed to prove it. It doesn't shrink your soul. It doesn't guilt you for choosing rest. It expands with you, or it fades, and both outcomes are grace. The deeper you walk into this clarity, the softer you become. Not naive, not detached, simply grounded. You realize that discernment is not the death of empathy. It's the birth of wisdom. You begin to see that your role was never to carry others, but to illuminate what's possible when you stand tall in your own light. Your withdrawal becomes your teaching. Your boundaries become your prayer. And then comes the quiet joy of no longer rescuing. You start to feel the peace that comes from trust. Trust that life has its own intelligence, that every soul must walk its own distance, that every fall has its purpose. You stop interfering with divine timing. You stop mistaking attachment for care. You stop needing to be needed. You wake up one morning lighter, freer, calmer. You no longer feel the pull to overextend, overexplain, overgive. You look back at your past rescues and realize they were all teachers. Every failed fix, every draining relationship, every goodbye disguised as guilt was preparing you for this clarity. Because what comes after letting go is something most people never find: freedom without guilt. There comes a quiet point in your awakening when you no longer feel the need to explain why you choose peace. You realize you don't owe anyone your exhaustion, your constant availability, or your endless understanding. You begin to see that protecting your energy is not selfish, it's sacred. Healing was never about becoming more tolerant of pain. It was about remembering that love without boundaries is not love, it's surrender.
Give yourself permission to stop rescuing people who refuse to rise. Give yourself permission to value peace over potential. Give yourself permission to love without losing yourself. These are not acts of distance. They are acts of devotion to truth, to balance, to the life your soul has been asking you to live. When you finally release the guilt, when you stop believing that your worth is measured by how much you can endure, something miraculous happens. Your peace begins to lead.
And as it does, your world transforms. You start attracting people who reflect your clarity, not your chaos. Conversations become deeper, not louder. Relationships become fewer, but truer. Your life becomes quieter, but never emptier, only purer. The ones who once thrived on your self-sacrifice fall away naturally, and in their place arrive those who honor your stillness, who don't need saving, who know how to stand beside you rather than lean upon you. Peace replaces pressure. Discernment replaces guilt. What you once called loneliness reveals itself as serenity. You return to the world not as a savior, but as a presence. You become the bridge between empathy and wisdom, standing in love, rooted in truth. You no longer react, you respond. You no longer absorb, you observe. Your energy stops leaking into every wound that asks for attention, and instead gathers into light that nourishes only what is aligned. You stop running into storms just to prove your strength. Instead, you become the calm after them. And this is where the true gift of healing reveals itself. Your stillness becomes medicine. Your calm becomes teaching. Your boundaries become blessings. You no longer preach about balance. You embody it. You no longer explain your worth. It radiates quietly. Those around you begin to notice. Some are inspired. Others are uncomfortable. But you no longer adjust your frequency to make others feel at ease. You've learned that peace doesn't need to apologize for being peaceful. Because the truth is simple. You were never wrong for caring. You simply learned the difference between care and captivity. You learned that love does not require suffering. You learned that healing doesn't mean rescuing everyone. It means remembering that everyone has their own timing. You've come to understand that letting others walk their path, even when it's dark, honors their soul more than carrying them ever could. So let the unready walk their own path. You are no longer their ladder. You are not here to pull others out of their storms. You are here to hold your own sky clear. The healer has now become the light itself. The ocean does not chase rivers, simply waits for them to return. You've done enough. You've given enough. You've become enough. And now the final truth settles into your body like peace after a storm. You cannot carry what won't walk. You cannot heal what won't face itself. You cannot lose what was never aligned. You can only continue to rise quietly, faithfully into the freedom that was waiting for you all along.